Welcome to Aspire to Retire.
The show that helps you plan smarter, retire with confidence, and enjoy that future you worked so hard for.
We're diving into the strategies and insights you need to build a secure and fulfilling retirement.
No jargon, no confusion, just clear, expert advice to help you take control of your retirement.
Because when it comes to your financial future,
every decision matters.
This is Aspire to Retire.
Hello and welcome to Aspire to Retire. I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson, and this is the show that helps you plan for a secure and fulfilling retirement. Today, we are talking about one of the biggest financial and lifestyle transitions that you will ever make: retirement. Whether you're a few years away or just around the corner, we will give you a checklist to ensure that you are fully prepared. So let's introduce our guests, Ralph and Tim Short, part of the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, a local fiduciary firm that prepares people for a successful retirement. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So today we will start with the essential checklist that every soon-to-be retiree should review. Now, there are 5 key areas to focus on. Assessing your financial readiness is 1. 2, plan your health care coverage. 3, decide on where you will live. 4, create a retirement lifestyle plan. And 5, review legal and estate documents. So let's break these down one by one. All right, guys, what are the first steps someone should take when they are, let's say, 5 years from retirement?
What I would say to most people, you need to be ready for retirement because it is a process. You need to understand what your income is going to be, what your expenses are going to be, and what do you want to do. I mean, because it's still going to cost you money to live the lifestyle that you've always dreamed of, because you didn't want to retire to do nothing, did you, when you retire? You wanted to retire to something. So what is your plan? And everybody's got a different plan, so you need to prepare that for you and have somebody understand what your goal is so we can help you. Would you?
And you got to assess your current situation. I think that's where a lot of people, they're really busy just doing their career, right? They're working, they're putting in the time, and they're trying to build up this pot of money, but they don't really know where they are, right? So, you got to review where your savings are. You got to review your risk tolerance. There's a lot of things that come into it. Especially nowadays, we're seeing companies cut back. We're seeing, federal government cutting back. There's a lot of things coming into play that a lot of people weren't anticipating. So I think it's important, especially 5, maybe even 10 years away, to make sure that you're reviewing these items to make sure that, hey, if that day comes unexpectedly, we'll be okay.
And the other thing I always tell people about is this: you've never retired before. So how do you know what you need to do? So that's why you need to kind of find a fiduciary that can help you do the process that it takes. Because guess what? Best teacher I ever had has been experience.
That's true, because they don't teach us this in school. I wish we had a life class in school that would teach us how to retire, all the stuff that we need to do. And so that brings me to my next question. How does somebody estimate their retirement expenses accurately?
They need to go through their checkbook. It's a lot of work, right?
That's stressful. Nobody wants to do that.
And nobody goes through their checkbook anymore.
Right. Checkbook, credit card statements, whatever, and just pencil out whatever it is that you're doing. Because guess what? What you're spending on probably beauty products is a lot different than what I do.
Wait a second.
Okay?
Beauty products? Hold on.
I'm pretty sure you probably spend a lot more on your hair treatment during the year than I do.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I do have to keep this up.
But everybody's different. So you need to understand what it is it's going to cost you. One of the biggest things that we do when we do our roadmap process is do the cash flow analysis of your retirement years. Make you visualize what it's going to look like. And one of the biggest things that people forget, particularly if you've got grandkids, and most people in their retirement years are going to have grandkids, what is it going to cost for gifts? What is it going to cost for Christmas? They don't think about that because they just go out and do them, and all of a sudden, that's part of the budget. And all of a sudden, you might be spending a lot more than you anticipated.
That's a good point, because I've got nephews now and a godson, and every time my birthday or Christmas comes around, I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't plan for this. So yeah, I mean, if you're a grandparent, you probably have tons of grandkids.
Yeah, and it's very important that you got to track your spending. And a lot of people, they kind of turn a blind eye to what they're doing month in and month out. Well, if you do that, if you've got a Amazon bill of $2,000 a month and you're not incorporating that, right? are you still going to be able to do the things that you want? So, there's so many different things out there. I made the joke about the checkbook. Hardly any people use a checkbook anymore. But, everybody's going to use a credit card or a bank card of some sort. There's so many apps out there that can track it. So that would be step number one, is making sure that we know we've got a good handle on what we're spending monthly, because those bills aren't going to stop. There are some tweaks and some modifications that we can make, but if we don't know what we're actually spending, how can we do that?
Yeah.
And it's a very scary thought for a lot of people because they've never done it before.
Right.
How many people do you know actually have a budget and go by it?
No.
They don't.
No.
And that's just part of the process that we have to go through
Right.
to understand what your retirement is going to be like.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. We don't want to think about it, and then all of a sudden you approach retirement, and then you kind of have to start thinking about it. So we talked about expenses. Now, then there's healthcare coverage, because that's something that I feel like is a big unknown. We don't know how much healthcare coverage we're going to need. So when should someone start thinking about that? And what are the biggest concerns when it comes to healthcare coverage?
I mean, right now, if you're planning on working until 65, which we see that quite a bit just because of medical insurance, right?
Right.
Because at age 65, as it stands right now, that's when Medicare is going to kick in, right? So you've got to start paying attention. Specifically, if you're not paying attention by age 60, then you need to start by age 60, right? Because it's a very complex thing, right? There's different supplement plans out there. There's different coverages. There's this, there's that. You got to make sure you got a good handle on it, because, hey, if you've got, I like to call it a bulletproof health insurance plan now while you're working, meaning that you're really not going to come much out of pocket, if something were to happen. Medicare plan doesn't work that way. So you got to make sure that you've got different plans to do different things. So it's very important to dive into that. Not, hey, I retired Monday, now let's take a look at it on Friday.
Yeah, that's a good point there. And so what about mistakes that people make when they're planning for retirement? Because like you said, most of us haven't done this before, and I'm sure we all make a lot of mistakes as we're trying to go through the process.
I would say number one is just underestimating what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Just a year or so ago, it was probably $2 or $3 a dozen for an egg. Now it's about $6 or $7 a dozen. So you probably didn't have that in your budget.
No.
So just kind of understand what that's going to be. And if you're doing proposals as far as a budget, you probably need to have a couple of what ifs in there. Like, what if the expenses go up by 5%? How's that going to affect your budget?
Right.
So those are some things that we do. The other thing, like Tim was talking about, is Medicare costs, because we don't know what it's going to be. Let's say that you're anticipating it's going to be about $150 to $200 a month, and because you're making too much money, your Medicare costs just went up because of the situation that how you pay for it. So those are certain things that we talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's important because most people haven't heard of the IRMA rule before, and that's where, there's a lot of people that will try to take out a large lump sum out of their 401k, and if it's pre-tax, that's going to put you in a high tax bracket. So not only are you going to pay more taxes, but you're also going to end up paying more for your Medicare premium. So it's important to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that people fall short on is the investment planning, right? Once you get into retirement, it's not necessarily just about your investment planning per se, it's more about the retirement income. And if you've, said, hey, I've contributed to this 401k for 40 years, I'm just going to maintain the strategy because it's carried me this far. Well, it's different because you're probably going to need to use some of that, whereas when you were working, you weren't supposed to be tapping into it. I can't say that rule applies to everybody, but you've got to make sure that you switch gears from accumulating that wealth to the distribution of that wealth.
Okay.
And I would say to most people, you need to kind of, number one question we have, there's two questions. One, should I pay off my mortgage? The other one's, when should I take Social Security? And it all depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. Now, if you're still going to work and at 62, guess what? You probably shouldn't be taking your Social Security unless you've got bad health, because guess what? You get a lot less at that point in time.
Wow. All right. Good conversation, guys. We have to take a brief break, but before we do, Tim, tell us about our special offer.
All right, Cheryl. So the first 10 callers from today's program, if you've saved $250,000 or more for a retirement, we love the opportunity for you to give us a call. We'll bring you into the office and we'll create your very own retirement roadmap. And the best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
All right, complimentary. We love that. And so we're going to open up the phone lines now. So if you'd like some personal advice about retirement planning or to schedule a consultation, call 833-897-4845 or simply scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen. More to come. Stay with us right here on Aspire to Retire.
Imagine the future you've been wanting all along. A world where your retirement income is covered and you don't have to worry. Your financial assets are protected, and you have an experienced team fighting every day to grow your assets. Imagine a company creating tax strategies and legacy plans to make sure your loved ones are protected no matter what happens. At Welcome Home Financial Partners, we're an experienced financial team with the right professional licenses and an unbreakable commitment to making our clients feel like family. Here you'll find determined, friendly faces in a world filled with obstacles and problems. We help plan your retirement income to ensure you won't run out of money in retirement. We build in protection to make sure your assets are covered on all sides. We focus on growing your wealth to combat inflation and rising cost of living. And we design tax strategies to help you avoid paying back what you shouldn't while protecting the people you love. Our team never stops fighting for you. With an unparalleled work ethic, we work hard because we know your future depends on it. We're proud to help you choose the life you want to live in retirement. Welcome to your financial future. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire. We're having some great conversation today, so let's hop right back in. All right, guys, what would you say is the best way to balance investments and withdrawals in retirement?
The best thing to do is know what you need for withdrawals, and the other thing that you need to understand is where should you be taking them from? Should you be taking it from your savings account, after-tax accounts, or pre-tax accounts, or 401ks, things like that. So those are just simple things that you need to kind of take a look at.
Yeah, and I think, everybody relies on that one account, right? Whether it's a 401k or whatever, you got to make sure that you got diversification. And people here, and that's kind of a term that's often misused or misunderstood, if you will, because it's not, hey, I'm going to go out and buy 1,000 different shares of different stock, right? That's not what diversification is all about. You got to take a look at tax diversification. You got to look at different investment vehicles. There's a lot of things that come into that, because if you've got everything in one pot, right? You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You've got it all into one pot. Well, if that pot's not performing well and we're taking money out and we're losing money, that's going to be a double whammy, if you will.
But I would also say to people, they need to understand what the purpose of the money is for. Because if you are looking at paying your bills, then you need liquidity. Those are bank products, checking accounts, savings accounts, credit unions, things like that. If you're looking at long-term investing, then you should be in the market. And then you've got different things that you sit down and talk to people about as far as what their goals are. Maybe it's a new car 5 years from now, or maybe it's a college education for your grandkid that was just born. So those are different purposes of money. So you need to align that with what you're trying to do.
Oh, don't even start about the price of college tuition these days. I don't know how anybody affords that. So speaking of different buckets and how much money you should save, what if retirees, what if they outlive their savings? Then what?
Well, that's not a pretty picture, but
No.
there are ways that you can ensure that you don't run out of money, right?
Yeah.
There's different strategies when it comes to Social Security, which is something that's part of the roadmap process that we do, right? Let's figure out how we can maximize Social Security, and everybody's a little bit different, and the only way that we know the Social Security strategy head on, the right option is to know when you're going to pass away, and nobody can tell you that, right? But there are ways to maximize it that people don't pay attention to, because we run into people quite a bit that, hey, I'm going to take it at 62.
Right.
Well, how do you know that's the right strategy? Well, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live, and we don't know what Social Security is going to do. You got all the naysayers or the Debbie Downers of the world that don't, they don't quite understand what's really going on. So there are other things to take a look at. If we've got a good strategy on Social Security, especially if it's a married couple. And that's where I think a lot of people need to say, hey, maybe one person could collect at 62, but maybe the other one, the breadwinner, if you will, could delay it a little bit longer. Because once somebody passes away in the relationship, they're going to lose one check. Now they will get the higher benefit, but there's still one check down. So you got to make sure that your retirement income plan is going to sustain that.
But I always tell people, it depends on what you're trying to do. It's not about what I think you need to do. It's about what you want to do, what it is that you want to do later down the road, because everybody has a different goal, different plan. So when we go through our roadmap, it's not the same for everybody. And as fiduciaries, we have to make sure we understand what your goals are, what you're trying to do, maybe what your spouse is trying to do. You never know what's going to happen, because, I have one client that had come in and talked to us, and he was thinking about taking his pension, and that was going to be it was going to be a joint survivorship.
Oh.
And within a month before it took place that he sent it in, he got diagnosed with cancer, and within 3 months he was passed on.
Oh.
And guess what? Because he waited and made that change, now he's got a joint survivorship for his wife, and now she has some things. So as a fiduciary, those are things that we sit down and talk to people about.
And as fiduciaries, that means you have their best interest in mind?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And I think one of the best strategies when it comes to ensuring you don't outlive your money, this isn't a popular vote here, but control your spending. Right?
Oh.
So now, yes, we want to have those paychecks and those playchecks,
Yes.
if you will. But if you've got really bad spending habits, then
Right.
you might not have that money, throughout your retirement years. So there are other things to consider. We've talked about Social Security, but also too, there's a thing called an annuity, which a lot of people don't like to discuss, but it could have a play there to make sure that you've got guaranteed income for forever too.
Oh, boy.
But the other thing a lot of people don't realize is their retirement accounts, whether they need it or not, if they don't need it, you're going to be required to take some of it out at some point in time. How's that going to affect your taxes and your spending
Right.
habits and things like that?
People don't realize that, do they?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So what about tax efficient withdrawal strategies for retirement accounts? What can you say about that?
Well, it kind of depends on, when it comes to taxable versus non-taxable versus Roth, whatever, there's different variations to it. There's a lot of things that come into play there, right? Especially depending on what that investment vehicle is doing, right? So, usually it's better to draw down on your taxable accounts because, you're just talking about the required minimum distributions. Once you hit a certain age with pre-tax money, the government's going to require you to pull out money unless you want to pay them a penalty, right? So there are ways of doing that to where, everybody wants to grow, right? We all want to make as much money as we can. But at a certain point, think of it this way. If you've got $1 million today and you retire and you're age 60, right? And you just want to build that pot of money. You don't need it, right? You've got a pension, you got Social Security, your living expenses, your lifestyle is covered. And we build this $1 million up to $3 million once you hit age 63. Now you're going to have to pull out way more out of that taxable account. So it might be better to start drawing down on taxable accounts, leave the not taxable accounts alone because you're not going to be required to take money from those accounts.
And I think I always tell people 2 words. It depends. It depends on your situation, what you're trying to do. I mean, we can sit here and talk all day long about what we think you should do, but we don't know enough about the audience to say, this is what you need to do, unless you come in and sit down with us and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Can you help us get to that point? And that's what we do. But to sit here or anybody else say, you should do this, you should do that, it depends. That's
Right.
the best answer I can give a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a lady who called in from actually our radio show, and we were talking, and they're just living off Social Security. That's the only income that they've got. Now, they had a windfall because I think it was the husband's parents had passed away and left them a substantial amount of money, and they're like, we just want to leave it alone. Well, it's all pre-tax money. Now, this was a few years back, but they just wanted to leave it alone, and it's like, well, you do realize if you continue to build this big pot of money up, right, once you start having to pull money out of that account, your Social Security taxes are going to be affected too. So, let's just say it was $5,000 a month in total. Well, you probably won't get $5,000 a month anymore because more of it's going to be taxable. So those are things that the audience really needs to take into consideration.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this. So another question that I've heard is, should retirees continue to invest, or is it better to shift to cash? I see a lot of people now just carrying a bunch of cash around.
That is true. There's a lot of people out there that's scared to death. They don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
But like I say, it depends on what you're trying to do. Now, if you're worried about what the stock market is going to do, but how much is too much in cash?
Yeah.
I don't know. We have some clients that will come in with $100,000 to $500,000 in cash, just sitting in the bank. And I'm like, well, what are you doing with it? It's just sitting there. It's not helping you grow or anything else. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. You do need to have some money in cash for liquidity. You do need to have some money.
Yeah, and I kind of make a joke about that is, okay, hey, a lot of people are comfortable with a lot of money in the bank, right?
Yeah.
But what is that money doing for you other than making you comfortable? It's not doing anything else.
Exactly.
Right? So you've got to make sure, yes, we have to establish the emergency savings, but we got to take a look at some growth options too.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say too, I'm just going to bury some cash in the backyard. That way no one can touch it. I've heard that, but I don't know if I'd recommend that one. All right, we've got to take another brief break, but Tim, once again, tell us about our special offer.
All right, so the first 10 callers of today's program, if you've saved $250,000 or more for retirement, pick up the phone, give us a call, 833-897-4845. We love the opportunity to bring you into the office and we'll create your very own retirement roadmap. Best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
Ooh, all right. We love that. We'll keep those questions coming and take advantage of our professionals. Call for advice right now. And as Tim said, even schedule that consultation, 833-897-4845. Coming up next, my favorite part of the show, we'll feature some of your burning questions.
It was the longest running bull market in history. everything was looking up. While inverted yield curves pointed to a recession, the market kept going. And then, if you're planning to retire soon, that could spell bad news for your returns. Our team can help you better withstand the bear market. Now more than ever, you need a financial professional to stand with you. Visit our website to learn more about our services. You can call or email our office to schedule your complimentary consultation today.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire, our favorite part of the show. Time to feature some of your questions. So thanks as always for writing into us. We'll start with James from Midlothian. James says, I'm planning to retire in 5 years. Should I start shifting my investments to a more conservative option right now? Good question.
I would say possibility, but we don't know enough to tell you or make recommendations because we don't know where it is. We don't know what you're trying to do with it. But more than likely, if you're in retirement, you should think about reducing some of the risk, take some of the risk off the table. But I can't tell you where your money is to say, yeah, you need to do that.
Yeah, and usually kind of a good rule of thumb is as you're approaching retirement, it's, kind of start shifting gears, if you will, right? I'm not going to say, hey, if you got $500,000 in your 401k, just take it and put it in cash. I mean, I wouldn't know if I'd say that, but, start gradually shifting that to be a little bit more conservative if, everybody's got their own little risk tolerance. But making sure that, hey, if we want to retire in 5 years and the market crashes in year number 3, we want to make sure that we still have some money.
Yeah, okay. Next is Susan from Glen Allen. She says, what is the best strategy for claiming Social Security benefits? Should I wait till I'm 70? I know we touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we get this question quite a bit, but I think more often than not, people are asking if they need to claim it at 62 instead of 70. So it really does depend on your situation, your marital status, your health. There's a lot of things that come into play with that. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at the numbers, if you wait longer, the more you're going to get. But at the end of the day, we don't know how long you're going to be here. So if you claim at 70 to maximize your Social Security and you die at 70 and a half, well, you're probably better off taking it at 62.
Oh, man.
But this is all part of that roadmap process that we take a look at because there are strategies to maximize Social Security to make sure that you can have that retirement that you want.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. This next question, I'm actually very interested in this one. Mark from Chesterfield says, I still have a mortgage. Should I pay it off before I retire? And I'm curious about this because I have a friend who just retired, but he still has a mortgage.
So what I tell people when they ask me this question, because I think that's probably the second most asked question that we get besides when to take Social Security, is it depends on what you're trying to do. How much is your mortgage? I mean, if you've got a mortgage left that's $200,000 or $300,000 and you've got $300,000 in your 401k, guess what? You're probably not going to be able to pay it off. And my question has always been to people this. We were always taught by our parents not to have a mortgage when you retire. Pay it off as quick as you can.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I know you've heard that.
I know
before.
exactly. Yeah.
But is it a problem to have a mortgage in retirement or not having the cash flow to pay the mortgage payment? The problem. If you've got money coming in that you don't need, just go ahead and continue to pay for the mortgage because guess what? You're going to lose $200,000 or $300,000 as soon as you pay it off. It's not liquid. What are you going to do at that time if you need more money? So it just depends.
Oh my goodness. All right. That's your favorite phrase. It depends. Lisa from Henrico says, how do I budget for healthcare costs in retirement? Oh, that's such a tough question because we just don't know.
Well,
It depends, right?
It depends. It's my turn. Yeah. So I think it's important to make sure that you've got Medicare under control, right? Because Medicare, depending on how much insurance and depending on how much coverage, depends on the cost, right? So you can have, A, B through, I don't know what the letter stops at this point in time because there's so many different plans out there, but it all comes at an expense. So you've got to make sure that's step number one is understand what your health care coverage is going to cost you in retirement. But of course, the older we get, normally the more things that are going to come up, right? Whether it's injuries, whether it's knee replacements, whether it's bad health, we need to make sure that we compensate for that. You've got to be flexible.
Yeah, and also car payments, unexpected things, or not car payments, but repairs. I just had a $1,000 one pop up the other day. And
that's right.
So yeah, it's hard to budget for stuff like that. Tom from Richmond says, what are the tax implications of withdrawing from my 401k?
Well, I want to tell you this, Cheryl, and you probably will be a little bit surprised because you're not old enough to understand this yet.
Uh-oh,
But
okay.
a lot of people come in and say, why am I having to pay taxes? I'm retired, I'm over 65, why am I paying taxes? I said, age and your stage of retirement has nothing to do with the tax code. It's all based on your income. So if you're making income, you're going to be paying taxes. Income, your 401k withdrawals, because most of the ones out there are pre-tax, whatever you pull out is taxable income.
Yeah.
So you're going to pay taxes on it no matter when you take it out or whatever.
Yeah, if you've got pre-tax money, you're going to have to pay taxes on once you start taking it out. So now if you've got the ability to have Roth inside of your 401k, it's going to work a little bit different. So that's why it's important to get a second set of eyes on your plan.
Yeah. Is it good to have a Roth and a regular IRA?
Well, once again, it's case by case, right? But usually when I wasn't trying to say depends, I was going to say case by case. But when it comes down to it, you're going to have to pay taxes one way or another, right? If you're putting money into the Roth, you're going to have to pay taxes today. If you put it into the pre-tax account, the traditional side, you're not going to have to pay taxes today, you defer it. So you got to see what those strategies look like, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. We want to make sure that you keep as much as you can.
And a lot of people hear the word Roth and they said, that's what I want. So they come in and say, it's tax-free income, that's what I want. But they forget that if they convert that, they're going to have to pay taxes up front on that whole amount. Now, if you want to do Roth conversions, that's a possibility, it's good for you. But what we'd recommend is make sure you don't take enough money out that puts you up in a different tax bracket.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. Beth from Mechanicsville says, is it a good idea to downsize my home in retirement?
Well, I think right now you could downsize your house, but you're not going to downsize your payment, right? Because, you could have purchased your home 30 years ago. You've got some good equity in there, but you might not be able to go out and buy another house with the equity that you've already built, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure with where interest rates are, moving costs. I mean, if you move today, especially if you've got a family, not just a couple, it's going to cost you maybe $5,000 or $10,000, especially depending on where you're moving. If you're moving across the country, it's probably more. So there's always costs that you have to weigh. Once again, it's a numbers game. But if you can't navigate your home for health reasons, maybe that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah. All right. Good answer there. Well, before we wrap up, Tim, one last reminder.
All right. So the first 10 callers from today's program, if you've saved $250,000 or more for retirement, pick up the phone, give us a call, 833-897-4845. We'd love the opportunity for you to come into the office and we'll create your very own retirement roadmap just for you. The best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
All right, so don't wait, guys. Again, as he said, those first 10 callers will receive a complimentary, no obligation retirement review to help ensure that you are on the right track. So if you have saved at least $250,000 for retirement, call right now, 833-897-4845 to claim your spot, or simply scan that QR code on the bottom of your screen. On behalf of all of us at Aspire to Retire, I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson. Have a great day.